Have you ever gotten that feeling where you meet a man and for some reason or another, he garners some kind of respect or admiration from you pretty instantaneously? I want you to imagine that there is actually a version of you that exists in a parallel universe that is exactly like this. He attracts people to him. When he starts to speak, people actually listen, and they're not just waiting for their turn to speak. When he walks into a room, heads start to turn. People start to want to be around him. Just the energy that he gives off, the confidence that he exudes, naturally draws people to him and draws attention to him. This version of you, this parallel version of you that exists, you could be more like him by the end of this video. Because that's not you right now, let's be honest, right? But you could be more like that guy, that parallel version of you by the end of this video if you just gave this your full attention. You might immediately have some coping voices in your head right now saying, oh no, that's all about, height, or now that's all about, attractiveness, just some guy that has a pretty face or some shit, like, oh, he has a Chad jawline or some shit, like, oh, it's all about that, height, good looks, whatever, muscles, like, I can't be like that, I'm not like that, that's not me, right? When I was in high school, I was a tall dude, secondary school in Singapore, which is like 13, 14, right? I was in the rugby team, I was a tall dude, fairly, good looking, status wise, I was up there in, amongst my peers, right? There weren't many people that I would look to and emulate, because when you're in high school, everyone's kind of a little bit uncomfortable in their own skin still, and you're still trying to kind of find what your identity is, and you latch onto things and you mimic things that you see on TV, or the way that someone talks, one of your YouTubers that you follow or something, you kind of mimic them. Maybe there's someone in your school that's really popular and cool and you kind of like mimic them a little bit. There was only one person who got this kind of respect from me. And it was actually my rugby captain, right? And so I want to dispel some of this stuff in your head where you're thinking, oh, it's about looks, height, muscles, whatever. Because the rugby captain that I had, he garnered such respect from me. And it was nothing to do with his physical stature. He was much shorter than me. We're about the same build. We're both skinny 13, 14-year-olds, whatever. It wasn't about any of that. It was about the presence and the depth of that presence where he was just unshakably himself in every moment. He was extremely talented as a rugby player and hardworking at the same time, right? And just very unapologetically himself, right? There was nothing about that person that was inauthentic, right? It was pure authenticity, groundedness, and a lot of stuff that I'm going to get into later for why those mechanisms exist in our brains. In this video, I'm calling this trait gravitas, okay? Now, gravitas, think gravity, okay? So think attracting things towards you, think weight, depth, right? Having that ability to attract people and opportunities to you, right? That presence. When you walk into a room, people feel the weight that you have, the substance, right? There's depth there, and that in turn attracts people and opportunities towards you. Okay, now I've been able to use this trait both unconsciously before and consciously now to attract people and opportunities to me throughout my life, right? I've been given many leadership positions, since I started to learn these things and work them out. Right, when I was in school, I was in college before university, age 17, 18, right? I was head boy in that school. I was, captains of sports teams during that time and also after in university. I was an officer in the army, right? So I had a platoon of men that I would lead. So I had leadership roles there for 2 years in the army. And, while I was in university, I was the king of the hall and all this kind of thing. And now in my business, I have a team of people who are extremely motivated and happy and excited to work for me and to get great results. All right. So how was I able to do all of these things? Is it because I was manipulating people? Is it just because I have a pretty face or something? I'm going to make the case in this video that it's none of that. Like at the core, it's actually none of that. This is not some woo-woo thing. Now, you might not know it just yet, but there are real tangible choices that you can make, right? And ways that you can choose to operate in this world that can attract people and opportunities to you in the ways that I've just described. Okay, so I want to impart to you how you can maximize this trait for yourself, right? Because this is an extremely potent ability, right? To be the man that when you walk into a room, people's heads turn, right? When you start to speak, people are actually drawn to listen and they pay attention to what you're saying, right? So you need to really lock in right now because this could be the highest return on investment video that you watch this entire week if you follow the principles that I'm about to lay out for you. Now, an analogy for the sake of this video, I want you to think of gravitas as a layered cake, right? So there's outer layer and inner layers, and those inner layers are what, supply and feed into the outer layers, right? So the layers are going to be presence, which is the outermost layer is presence. Inside that is self-image, okay? And inside that, at the core of the, let's say, the cake is character, okay? So each of those inner cores is what supplies the outer core. So your presence comes from your self-image and your self-image comes from your character. Okay, so we're going to go through these in order in this video. Now, I want to dispel, again, some things that you're thinking in your head right now. You're thinking, okay, money, muscles, stuff like this. You're thinking about that in terms of attracting things, attracting people, etc. Okay, now let's talk about money just really quickly. Okay, money is just a multiplier. Okay, money just amplifies who you currently are. That's it. Who you are, your character, your current self-image, and your current, money just amplifies that. So I'll give you an example. Okay, if I found some 19-year-old who goes to the club every weekend with his friends, right? But they don't really have that much money, so they kind of go to the club and they just pay for entry. They go and they stand on the dance floor. They drink. They have a good time. If I gave that 19-year-old $10,000 today, just boom, $10,000. Here you go, boom. Where do you think that money's gonna go? Do you think it's going to go into some kind of investment? No, it's going straight into the club's pockets. Instead, it's going to be, they're going to get a table, boom, they're going to get the table 5,000, right? They're going to go, boom, let's get the Dom Perignon flow in, right? Like, that's where all the money's going to go. Because money just amplifies who you currently are. The existing person underneath that just amplifies that. So money is not, we're not going to be talking about that actually in this video, right? It is important, right? But in terms of gravitas, okay, it's not the core stuff that we're going to be covering here. Okay, and then muscles, right? Being in good shape, right? I have a video about being in good shape. So again, there's no way that I'm ever going to knock, being in shape. But again, it's not touching the core of this video. Okay, so being in shape is part of the presence layer, okay, of gravitas, because definitely when you're in great shape, that helps with your presence. Okay, but these are like sprinkles on the top of the cake. Okay, that's what this is really, how you should think about this. If you put sprinkles and icing on a cake, right, it does make the cake look more appetizing and more people will be attracted to eat that cake. Okay, but if underneath those sprinkles and icing is a turd, no matter how good it looks and how well iced and well sprinkled it is, still no one is going to take a bite of that because they can see that it's a turd underneath, okay? Like, and maybe one or two people who are really, really naive and oblivious might accidentally take a bite, right? They'll take one bite, right, before they realize, oh, this is a turd. It looked really good, but it's a turd underneath, okay? So this is how I want you to think about things like muscles and money, etc. These are good, they're icing, they're sprinkles on the cake, but anyone that is worth attracting and worth taking a bite out of the cake is going to see if it's a turd underneath first. So what is presence, the outermost layer? Presence is the energy that people feel when they're around you. What sort of vibe do you give them? Nervous, skittish, unsure, inauthentic, awkward, lame, boring, uninteresting, right? Or do you give off the energy of calm, centered, authentic, deep, natural, right? Interesting, passionate, right? This is what people feel when they're around you. And again, this is nothing to do with stature. I know guys who are 6'3", 6'4", good looking, well built, but they still give off awkward energy, nervous energy. right? And I know guys with half of those baseline physical traits who give off certainty, right? And centeredness and just presence that beats the crap out of these people with, more physical stature. In the book, The Way of the Superior Man, there's a quote, which is, "In our world, a man's presence, his depth of awareness, is his most valuable asset." Okay, when you're with people, they can tell if you're present or not. They can tell if you're actually there. Right? I can sit across from someone and be talking to them, and I know full well whether their mind is here or not. Right? And that actually has a huge bearing on how much I actually want to talk to this person, what I want to share with them. If they're not here, if I don't feel their presence, I'm not interested in conversing with this person, right? I'm sure you might have heard this somewhere, but 93% of communication between humans is actually non-verbal, okay? So what this means is that our perceptual systems and our eyes are incredibly attuned to paying attention to body language, right? Paying attention to the way that the person's face is moving when they're talking, and even where their eyes are pointing, right? This is actually why humans evolved to have white sclera, like the whites around your pupils, because this is how we were able to tell where other primates were looking, to see if there's danger, to see if there's something to pay attention to, etc. That's actually how we developed this, right? So we're extremely attuned in ways that you aren't even aware of, that are incomprehensible to you, right? But that you're paying attention to someone's body language, you're paying attention to the tone of their voice, all of this stuff it's non-verbal. It's not the words that they're saying, right? That matters when you're having a conversation with someone. So the body language of someone with strong presence, right, is, you've probably heard this before, but standing or sitting or walking with your chest out and your shoulders back, right, and your chin slightly up, right? This opens yourself up, right, to people, as opposed to closing yourself off, right? Because when you are looking closed off, right, again, there's really interesting sort of biological reasons for this you can actually postulate, right? Where when we're closing ourselves and we're closing our front, right, it's because we're trying to protect all of our most valuable internal organs are here, right? So when you're puffing, when you're not puffing your chest out, but when you're sticking that out and you're walking with your chin up, you're in some sense exposing to the world the most valuable, vulnerable parts of your body, right? You're exuding confidence, like, look, I'm gonna expose that, right, to whatever dangers are out there, as opposed to the complete antithesis of that is the fetal position, right, where you're completely covered. This is how we're born, right? We're born like this because we're covering the most sensitive, vulnerable parts of your body. So as a man, when you have good presence, right, if you pay attention to men that they're extremely confident, it's all the same. They're always shoulders back, chest slightly out, right? They carry themselves with, that kind of energy, okay? So that's part of it, okay? Eye contact is another great thing. You've probably heard this as well, but making good, solid eye contact with someone does a lot more for your presence than if your eyes are just constantly darting around, right? Because if your eyes are darting around, you're giving off nervous energy, you're giving off you're looking for something, you're trying to pay attention to what, danger or something that's around you, right? Versus if you can hold good eye contact with someone in a conversation, again, that makes them feel that you're present and you're paying attention to them, right? And it doesn't matter what's going on elsewhere, you're actually very grounded and you're very centered in what's going on right now. Another huge part of presence is actually being relaxed in the present moment, right? Appearing and actually being fully certain and relaxed in the moment, right? You're taking deep, full breaths, not some nervous, shallow breathing, right? You're there, you're taking full breaths, you're paying attention, you're actively listening to whoever's speaking, right? You're actually comfortable with silence as well. If there's a pause in a conversation, if there's a break, right? You're still there, you're still deeply present and making eye contact with the person, actively listening, right? People will tell you all sorts of things and open up in ways that you couldn't even imagine if they feel like you're actually there and actually listening. And when it's your turn to speak, you speak carefully, right? And you don't fake anything. You don't speak on anything that is out of your domains of expertise, right? If you're starting to say something, you're starting to have part of a conversation where you get this feeling, you get this gut feeling like the next thing that you're about to say you're not very sure of, then you probably shouldn't say that thing. Okay, not only because you might sound like an idiot, like in terms of the actual content of your speech, but also because, again, the tone of voice and the way in which you say it, people are going to be able to tell that you're faking. They're going to be able to tell that you don't actually have anything substantiating what you're about to say. People will pick up on those things. Again, it's non-verbal. Okay, so it's not the content of your speech, but it's how you say it, and it's your body language when you're speaking, that I will be able to pay attention to if I'm sitting across from you and you start waffling about something that it's going to be so obvious to me that you are out of your zone of expertise here, and you're just going off, speaking about something that you don't actually know about. Okay, so speak carefully. When it is your turn to speak on your strengths, right? And if you don't know much about a certain topic, right, and someone asks you something, you can actually just admit that, hey, I don't know, I'm actually pretty ignorant about that, to be honest, right? I don't actually know, I don't actually have an opinion on this. Like, being able to admit that is actually a strength, right? And even you're, in most cases, you don't even need to get there, right? You can just, again, remain silent if you're in a group, they're talking about something that, you're not so sure that you can actually contribute to the conversation, then don't. That's fine. But when it is your turn to speak, and when you do have something to say it with conviction, right? Say it with depth of your voice, right? People can hear that you're actually speaking about something that you're either passionate about, or you actually have knowledge that backs this. So you have to speak in that way too, right? You speak in a way that's convicted, that gives people confidence that they should pay attention to the next thing that you're about to say. Okay, and that's only going to come from, again, not speaking on things that make you feel weak, that are outside of, that are out of your depth, right? Don't speak on those things, right? When you have something to say, right, it should be something that you actually have conviction about and that you actually know, right? And that is what's going to give people the actual confidence to be like, yeah, actually, what is this person saying? Okay, he clearly knows something about this. I should maybe pay attention. There's something worth listening to here. Now, the common pattern that you can extract from all of those things that I just talked about is actually you being comfortable in your own skin. And that brings us to the self-image layer, right, which is inside the presence layer, right? Because this is going to determine a lot of those things that I just talked about, because this is about how you see yourself, right? Psycho-Cybernetics, which is a book written by Maxwell Maltz. This guy was basically a surgeon, right? He was a plastic surgeon, right? Cosmetic surgeon, where people would come into his office with, let's say, a deformity on their face, right? For maybe 25, 30 years of their life, they've had this thing on their face. And so they've developed the identity and the self-image of someone who is deformed, someone who looks ugly, right, compared to the average person. And so they've gone through their whole life, let's say, thinking that they're an ugly person, okay? Now, this surgeon will perform such a great cosmetic surgery, and they come out looking so beautiful, right? But that person still, this author realizes that it wasn't enough for him to just perform the surgery. Because these patients would come out and they would still be operating and living in the world as if they're an ugly person. They still feel ugly, even though the actual physical reality is that they look beautiful and that deformity or whatever they had is gone. They still had the self-image of an ugly person. So he realized and he noticed that he needed to provide post-surgery, almost therapy, to bring these people's self-image, let that self-image actually catch up with reality, because sometimes it doesn't, right? So your self-image is going to determine so much of how you behave in this world. So to have gravitas, you need to have the self-image of someone who believes they are the man, right? I am the man. Now, a lot of you are going to face this problem, which is that you're probably not the man yet, right? Or you don't feel like it at all, right? And there is no shortcut, by the way, to getting people to perceive you as being the man, right? There's no shortcut to that. You actually have to be the man, right? But a lot of us are in a position where we know we have such a long way to go, right? So the reality is that you need to understand that you are on the way there. You are becoming the man. You're not being the man, but you are becoming the man. And that in itself, that mode of being, is actually the most valuable thing. It is the thing that progresses you towards the ideal, that is more valuable than the ideal itself. Okay, it is better that you are on the path to becoming the man than that it's just dropped in your lap. Okay, so you need to start looking at yourself in this way, and you need to have the belief in yourself that, okay, I'm becoming the man, and then you need to have that belief and then immediately look for evidence that supports that belief. Okay, because how your brain unconsciously operates and how your self-image ties into this is that you have a belief about yourself, okay, and with that belief you will act in the world, and that action in the world will produce experiences, okay, and those experiences will produce some kind of result, some kind of feedback, which is then going to feed back into how you see yourself. So it is a cycle, okay? It's like belief, experience, and actions, and then feedback, and that feeds right back into the belief. So it's a loop, okay? So you need the belief, and then you need immediately to find evidence that substantiates that. So I love this example by Tony Robbins where he talked about, let's say right now in your room, okay, I want you to look around. I'll give you 5 seconds. Look around for anything that's brown. Okay, go. Okay, now close your eyes. Okay, you saw some things that were brown. Now just close your eyes. What did you see that was green? You probably came up with nothing there, right? Because the reality is that you see what you look for. Okay, if you're looking for brown, you're not going to see green, right? Now, another thing is how many things that you saw were brown that you decided were brown, but that actually weren't exactly, like maybe there were a few shades off, but you just took it as brown anyway because you're looking for that confirmation, right? You're looking for things that support your perceptions, right? So this is a really good example because if you're looking for evidence for you being the man, you will find it. But the problem is most of us aren't looking for that, right? We're not actively looking for evidence to say like, hey, look, I did this. This is proof that I'm disciplined. This is proof that, I'm strong in this situation, right? So this is where your belief comes from. It really is going to come from you actually paying attention and looking for these things in your daily life, right? Alex Hormozy has a great quote, which is, confidence doesn't come from shouting affirmations in the mirror, but by having a stack of undeniable proof that you are who you say you are. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. You need to find evidence for that. And if there's no evidence that you're the man, you got to create some, okay? You got to go get in the gym, do something ridiculous, right? Do something extremely difficult, push yourself, right? Start stacking up that undeniable proof that you are the man, that you're becoming the man. Okay, that's where your positive self-image is going to come from. So you got to stop saying self-deprecating things. Okay, stop with the self-deprecating humor. Stop paying attention to people who are speaking things over you that you no longer identify with. Okay, if someone comes along and says, "Oh, you know how you are, Chris. Oh, you've always had a short temper," or something like that. You don't need to take that on board. That's not helping your self-image at all, right? And you're just going to be looking, because of confirmation bias, you're going to be looking for things that confirm this thing. Okay, so think back to the brown, looking for a brown in your room example. Okay, if you're looking for brown, you will see brown, you won't see green. So quick recap, when you have the self-image of someone who is either, the man or becoming the man, you start to behave in ways that confirm that self-image, right? So you'll start to actually treat yourself and operate in social situations from a place of high standing and from a place of self-respect, where you're not going to behave in ways that now conflict with this idea that, no, like, I'm becoming the man. Like, I'm not going to mess around here, right? I'm not going to take any shit from anyone. You won't do that anymore. So you will start to naturally maybe walk with your chest back and, your chest out and your shoulders back and this sort of thing. And you'll start to have that behavior. And that will start to produce new experiences for you of people treating you with the respect that you're obviously treating yourself with, right? And then that's going to feed back into your beliefs. It's going to obviously be a positive upward spiral. And now the core of what's going to supply you with sustained evidence, right, over time to help you build and bolster that positive self-image and then to manifest that in your behaviors and your actions, in your presence, right? The core of that is going to be your character. How deeply sourced are you as a man? How true to yourself and to your purpose are you? What are your values, right? Because you can think of this like it's the core of this cake that we've been building, right? But it's like the Earth's core, right? I want you to think about it this way, where, okay, if I could at the snap of a finger just remove the core of the Earth, right? The iron core. One, the Earth would lose some of its gravitational pull, right? Because that was mass, that's a lot of mass in the center that's helping with the gravitational pull. So in a human sense, right, you will lose your gravitas, right? Because people can sniff out when you're not deeply sourced as a man, okay? So you remove that core, gravitational pull is less, but also everything else on the earth will start to die, right? Because the core is what's supplying the heat, and that's what's keeping everything, actually all the ecosystems on the earth alive. If you just remove the core, sooner or later everything on the earth would perish. It would be lifeless. Okay, so this is a great analogy for how your character is actually going to consistently be the thing that provides the evidence that you need to maintain the self-image. Because if you're doing silly shit, right, and your character is that of someone who is constantly doing dumb shit, it's going to be so hard for you to keep this positive self-image bolstered. Okay, so that's going to supply your self-image of you becoming the man. Okay, and that is what's going to manifest obviously in your behaviors and your actions. A great example of this, when I was in Bali for a month, I was living with a couple of my entrepreneur friends in Bali, right? We're living there, we're going to this gym called Obsidian. Now, Obsidian is a gym that is actually it's meant for influencers, I think, and stuff like that. So it's very popular. Like you walk in and it's just like everybody's got a tripod, like recording their workouts and stuff. But so anyway, I met tons of guys at Obsidian, right? Guys that were ripped, right? That were, jacked. A lot of them were rich as well, right? But, there were cases like there was this one person that I met, when I was doing an ice bath, right, in Obsidian. I met this guy, he was rich, he was ripped, right? But just speaking to him, he probably had really, a high self-image and stuff like this, but he was clearly really not comfortable in his own skin, right? His eyes were darting around. I could tell that as I was speaking to him, he was analyzing what I was saying, trying to find the right thing to say, like the next thing that would be right or that would be funny to say, right? And he's not actually being himself. There was no there. There was no character there when I was talking to this person. I felt they were just so inauthentic, and it was almost sad, right? Because I can tell that this person's really trying to be liked, right? Because like your character and your core, it's not about how nice you are, it's not about how likable you are or how funny you are, but you can tell when a person is just trying to be that. They're just thinking, okay, like what can I say here that's funny? How can I, insert like some level of status of myself in this conversation? You can pick these things up. But here's the thing, right? I can't tell you who you are. I can't tell you what your purpose is. But I can ask you a couple of questions. How authentic are you? How much are you just letting fear dictate your actions? Maybe your fear of failure or your fear of judgment. How much are you just conforming your behaviors to other people, wanting to be likable, right? Wanting people to like you, wanting people to think that you're nice and you're funny. How comfortable are you just being yourself in your own skin, right? Being interested in what you're interested in and not shying away from that, talking about things that you're passionate about, right? Not thinking that whatever it is that makes you different is embarrassing to you somehow. Because it's really going to come down to how closely can you track like who you actually are, and this is how you behave around people. This is who you want people to see you as, okay? And this is who you actually are. How much character depth that people sense that you have is going to come down to how closely you track this thing, okay? How closely you track who you actually are, how close your behaviors are to who that actually is. Because if you're just unapologetically yourself in a lot of situations, even if that makes you different in some way, that there's no one who is going to actually feel that you're weird. They might treat you that way because they're actually insecure. Because if you're being authentic and you're being yourself and they talk to you, and you talking to me is the same, you're the same person when you're talking to somebody else, right? You don't change your behavior, you don't change who you are. You're exposing to people that they themselves are acting inauthentically, and sometimes they don't like that. So they might shit test you, they might say something, challenge what you're doing, right? But if you just stay like actually authentic to who you are, and you're not apologizing for that. Look, I'm the same person when I'm talking to you as I'm talking to this other person, same dude, right? that authenticity is extremely powerful. It is extremely attractive because in this world, so much of the shit that we see and the content that we consume, we know it's not real. We can feel it, right? So when someone actually is real and a real person and they're authentic, we crave that. Humans crave things that are real now, especially in this world that we live in today. Okay, so the gravitas that you have is going to come from your presence, right? How people perceive you, the energy that they feel when they're around you, okay? And what supplies that energy in your behavior is how you see yourself, okay? So your self-image, right? How you see yourself in social situations, that is going to be supplied by how authentic you're being, which is your character. Okay, so you can see how this is structured. The presence is supplied by, that's your behaviors, right? How you're showing up. That presence is supplied by how you actually see yourself first and what you believe about yourself, right? That manifests in your actions. And that what constantly supplies the evidence for that self-image is going to be how authentic you are actually being, how true to yourself you are actually operating in this world. So if you watching this video can be as fearlessly yourself as possible, you will end up attracting the people that actually you want to be around, right? And that actually want to be around who you are, and the opportunities that actually line up with who you really are. You will attract those things if you can be as fearlessly yourself in every situation as possible. Okay, so that's really the 80-20 of this video. I hope that this was useful. I hope that this was a valuable video to you. Let me know in the comments if it was, and like and subscribe and all that if you're so inclined to do so. Thank you if you've made it to the end of this video. I really appreciate you putting the time here, and I hope that if you take these principles that we talked about, that it actually makes a difference in your life if you apply them. All right. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.